welcome everyone to the first public information session of the Rockland County Task Force on Resources Management. So thrilled to be with you all this evening. My name's Beth Davidson. I am the task force chair. I'm the county legislator for District 10, which includes, for those of you who don't know, the village of Nyack, Central Nyack, a bit of Valley Cottage, the entirety of Bardonia, and some of West Nyack and New City. So every time I leave my house in Nyack and drive here, I drive across Lake DeForest, across the causeway right out of Congers. So every time I come here, I'm reminded of our precious water resources and our responsibility to preserve them for future generations. So it's my honor to be chairing this task force. I am thrilled that we are restarting its important work and so glad to see so many of you here. So thank you everyone for taking your time to be here. That's really all I'm going to say for now. Nicole and Ariana have been doing a wonderful job. They'll introduce themselves and we'll get started. But again, just thank you all, and please consider me an open door and an open phone line if you have questions going forward. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Legislator Davidson. We're going to move on to some quick housekeeping.
Nicole, with that theme of housekeeping, I see two participants in the chat stating that they can't hear. I just want to make sure that we're able to address that.
Great, thank you, Ariana. So we'll start with, if you toggle to the top banner, I know it's a bit different than other platforms, so we're on a Teams webinar. If you see your top banner, there should be an option for camera with a down arrow and an option for mic with a down arrow. So if you're able to toggle there, you could change your audio settings and your connections, and that should hopefully help you. In addition, as we are in a webinar, it'll automatically turn your volume off. Oh, perfect, thanks. It'll turn your volume off and your camera off. So for anyone who's weary of having their camera turned on, you can do that manually, and we do ask that you turn your mic on later on when we have our Q&A segment towards the end of the webinar. The beginning of the webinar will be focused on the presenters that we have that might show up at the top of your screen. So that's myself, Ariana Polanco, Sam Ruley, and Legislator Beth Davidson. And then towards the end of our webinar, we'll be able to open the floor into a more collaborative, open discussion session. So here on this slide, you'll be able to see some icons. And these icons will help you kind of navigate through the Teams webinar session. So you'll see a chat function. Some folks have already put their name and organization in the chat. Thank you for that. You also will see a Q&A function. So you see this highlighted here. It might appear actually right next to your chat function on your top banner. And we ask that you use that to input any questions you might have for our presenters and speakers today. That'll allow us to keep a more organized and streamlined collection of all of our questions, and then address them later on when we download everything. Then there's some other functions, but for the majority of what we'll be using this webinar for today, you really just need to focus on the chat, Q&A, camera, and mic. And again, just a reminder that this meeting will be recorded and transcribed, so all attendees who registered for the event will be able to receive a copy of the recording via email, and that'll likely go out next week. For tonight's meeting, or I should say Teams webinar, we'll create an open line of communication between the task force and interested members of the public. The task force will likely reconstitute in June or September of this year, which will allow members of the public to also participate through our open meeting structure as well as subcommittee structure. And we'll go into those details later on. In the meantime, we'll be hosting informational sessions with previous task force members to explain our current status and operations, as well as learn more about collaboration potential. Tonight in particular, we'll have task force staff share a few slides outlining an overview of Rockland's drinking water sources, the task force mission, our recent 10-year history, membership, recent goals, that'll be 2025 through 2030, or a 5-year lookout, helpful resources, and then open the floor for Q&A to hear from our attendees. So before we can explain the task force mission, we just want to set some context for our drinking water resources here in Rockland County. So I'm sure most of you on the call know that all of our water supply is sourced from within the county's boundaries. That means that Rockland residents and visitors all draw water from the same 3 sources, regardless of whether you are connected to a municipal water supply or own a private well. The first major source is the Newark Basin Aquifer, which is composed of bedrock and provides nearly 50% of our water supply. The second is surface water sourced from the Hackensack Basin, mainly Lake DeForest Reservoir, providing around 30% of our supply. The third major source includes some sand and gravel aquifers along the Ramapo and Mawa River, which accounts for approximately 20% of our water supply. In all, 90% of Rockland's water is supplied by a private utility known as Veolia New York. Rocklanders also have municipal water suppliers in the villages of Suffern and Nyack, and roughly 10,000 private wells spread out across the county. Rockland's largest water provider, Veolia New York, has an approximate average daily demand of roughly 30 million gallons per day, with peaks in the summer months due to the growing season, recreation, and more at around 40 million gallons per day. This not only accounts for household use, but also includes other community factors such as businesses, hospitals, schools, parks, and more. Creative and collaborative water conservation methods, protection of water quality through research, planning, green infrastructure, and smart land use acquisition, and of course, water quantity, researching the balance between water supply availability and demand, are just a few ways the task force can support the protection of Rockland's water resources. Next, we'll learn about the task force mission, introduce our staff, and outline some of our membership. The leadership includes the task force chair and 2 full-time staff. The task force chair is, of course, Legislator Davidson, as outlined in our founding resolution. This person who serves is the chair of the Environmental Committee. Legislator Davidson leads regular task force meetings and creates subcommittees as needed, supports policy proposals to the county legislature, state, local, and federal governments, serves as a liaison with the county legislature and environmental committee on task force items, and serves as an overall spokesperson for the task force. There are 2 full-time staff members supporting the chair and the task force. They are both housed within the Rockland County Department of Health, Center for Environmental Health, and report to Sam Ruley, Director of Environmental Public Health. At this time, I'll let Sam introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. I think I know many of you. Director of Environmental Health at the Health Department. I am sort of the administrative support for the task force staff. I like to serve as, providing guidance and assistance. I generally sit on the task force as representative for the Commissioner of Health, and I have since the inception of the task force. And that's my role there. So happy to see everything kicking off again, and good to see everyone again.
Thank you, Sam. 2 full-time staff members, as I mentioned, support the chair and the full 19-member task force. The task force coordinator, which is my role, leads regular administrative operations involved with managing the task force and its subcommittees, performs technical work to lead special projects and community outreach efforts, seeks grant funding, and supervises the water conservation coordinator. I'll now pass it over to Ariana Polanco, our water conservation coordinator, to provide an overview of her role.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ariana Polanco, and as the Water Conservation Coordinator, I oversee a water conservation strategy grant from the Department of Environmental Conservation, and I work closely with stakeholders to lead the implementation of the county's water conservation plan, which includes 20 measures focused on reducing our water demand. Some of those initiatives include public outreach and education, connecting community members to resources for water efficiency, and some policy development to support conservation. And I'll pass it on to Nicole to go over the task force's mission.
Thank you, Ariana. So the task force's mission is to develop a county water plan and comprehensive water policy, which ensures a safe long-term water supply for Rockland County and incorporates sustainability, demand-side principles, and conservation. The authority of the task force is to advise and guide the task force chair, in our case, Legislator Beth Davidson. This is done through the 19 members serving as a fact-finding group, providing technical support and community engagement on various projects related to ensuring a safe long-term drinking water supply for Rockland County. Please note that this new iteration of the task force has new leadership and is working very closely with both the legislative and executive branches of government. Lastly, this task force is comprised of 19 individuals, each with their own expertise, and we'll go into a bit more of the membership and subcommittees in our next slide. The task force's founding resolution outlined 19 members with unique representation to create a diverse group of experts and community representatives to help make informed decisions on the future of Rockland's water supply. The 19 members are represented on the right-hand side of this slide. This includes representation from several county agencies, members of the scientific community, town supervisors and mayors, private businesses, advocacy groups, and our largest water provider. We have met with most of these representatives and will continue to meet through the end of March. This will help share task force updates and identify capacities to serve on the task force as membership. Historically, interested members of the public were able to participate in the task force through subcommittees. These subcommittees previously included communications, conservation, groundwater, stormwater, drought and flood, and systems management. While some of these subcommittees were very active, we will focus on a different approach in 2025, creating subcommittees based around active special projects. This will help us focus engagement and ensure meetings are relevant to current projects and tasks. Right now, we can anticipate a conservation subcommittee being formed to help Ariana with the implementation of the 20 measures outlined in the Water Conservation Plan. Other potential special projects could include a working group to help develop the new iteration of a task force GIS application. We know that was created in 2017, and we are eager to review that application and see the best use for it now in 2025. There are also options to review the County Open Space Acquisition Program evaluation criteria to have a better focus on source water protection. And then, of course, address any public comments on relevant New York State initiatives in the future. We'll now go into the past decade of accomplishments from the task force. Rockland's long-term water availability was a topic of much debate in the early to mid-2000s, where prior legislator Harriet Cornell was leading public engagement on this topic, connecting with communities, advocacy groups, scientists, and state agencies. Fast forward to 2014, former legislator Cornell presented Resolution 296 to dissolve the inactive County Water Board and form the Task Force on Water Resources Management. The 19-member group was formed and a coordinator was hired, housed at the County Planning Department. A kickoff meeting took place towards the end of 2014, and those 5 subcommittees that I outlined earlier were established, each with their own mission. Between 2015 through 2021, a great deal of work was completed. This includes the hosting of roughly 15 public meetings, securing of $350,000 in state grants, completing several special projects that were funded and co-led by task force members, including several studio projects with the Stevens Institute of Technology and Columbia University, hosting base camp communications platforms, updating drought models and groundwater recharge studies, developing adult and youth water conservation programs, and of course, the adoption of the Water Conservation Plan in 2020. Then in 2022, the task force hired its first water conservation coordinator and relocated from the county's planning department to the County Department of Health. This move was intentional to streamline the implementation of the conservation measures outlined in the plan and work more collaboratively with the Center of Environmental Health. Lastly, in 2024, a new chair was confirmed. That's legislator Beth Davidson, and later in the year, a new coordinator, myself, was hired. Next, we'll go into an overview of our near-term goals. So again, these are our next 1 to 5 year goals. So for 2025, we're looking to complete some administrative and technical goals. This includes reconstituting the membership, implementing the water conservation measures, managing our open grants, developing 2025 through 2026 annual plan of work. We will be mindful to include the public with this work plan development, and you could do so by seeing our priorities survey, which is listed on the right-hand side of this slide, and you could actually access it by using your phone with a QR code. And we have previously been circulating this via email and it's going to be listed on our social media platforms, which we'll go into later on as well. This survey is going to be open through March 1st. We'd love to hear the public's feedback and help hear what they think would be a priority for the task force, and then we will review that. And once the task force reconstitutes, we'll be able to analyze those results and rank them to see what is feasible for the task force to undertake. Additionally, we're working on collaborating on various county initiatives. So this includes the Climate Smart Communities Task Force and updates to the county's comprehensive plan. We're also striving to reach our end goal of developing a county water plan and comprehensive water policy, which we'll go into more detail soon. And next, Ariana will go over some of the water conservation measures to provide some additional context.
Thank you, Nicole. So in April of 2016, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation awarded the task force $250,000 to support a water conservation strategy plan for the county. And so nearly 40% of those funds were used to hire a consultant known as Jacobs Civil Consultants with the goal of developing a conservation plan. And so on March 3rd, 2020, the county legislature adopted the Comprehensive Water Conservation and Implementation Plan, again, which is focused on reducing water demand via 3 strategies, including information sharing, the passing of incentives, and also the development of regulations. And the funds that remain will now be used for the implementation of the plan. And so decisions related to programming and the execution of this plan are made collaboratively with the goal of including input not only from task force members, but also the Water Conservation Committee and the general public so that we can best understand how we want to tailor our work for community needs and for our intended outcomes. So there are a total of 20 different measures. And again, there's those 3 specific strategies highlighted on the left. And the measures that appear in a light font and are bolded, specifically measures 2, 4, 5, and 18, are measures for which implementation has already begun. And most of those are which are information-based. And so it's important for us to educate the public on the importance of water conservation and the need for it, especially here in Rockland County. And there's a number of ways that we've looked to engage the public, which appear on our next slide. So we as task force staff and leadership understand the importance of public outreach and community engagement. Our work cannot be done in a vacuum, and it's important for us to be present and available within the public so that we can understand how to best address our priorities together with public input. And so that includes educating the public on the importance of understanding our water systems, as well as the limitations that exist within those water systems, because it's going to help set the foundation for environmentally responsible and sustainable water use practices for current and for future generations as well. Some of our outreach thus far has included attending local water awareness events, which is highlighted in the Water Conservation Plan, and that really allows us to connect with community members, better understand their concerns around water, and it also helps us to connect them to resources for water efficiency, such as Veolia's Conservation Rebate Program, and also helping them understand the true value behind conserving water. And we've also worked closely and had the pleasure of working with some of our public school districts individually, but also through a partnership with R+ to bolster water conservation education. And so those collaborations through the Water Conservation Education Program include more structured slides and lectures and activities within the schools or in class settings to reinforce, again, that environmental sustainability lens to our youth, because we know that they're going to grow up to be the leaders and decision makers of our future. We also plan to launch a water conservation education campaign with a consultant that specializes in public relations because we want to maximize our impact while also learning some of the best strategies for meeting our intended outcomes. And we also have task force staff, which are also actively growing our community connections through some of our participation, such as that with the Climate Smart Communities Task Force and those related projects. We're also interested in sharing more updates through public meetings, such as those for the Board of Legislature, and also through our user engagement survey. And much of this work is going to lead us to our ultimate goal of developing a larger county water plan, which Nicole will talk about on the next slide.
Thank you, Ariana. So the past decade of work of the task force staff and members provided us with a lot of studies and research to help fill certain chapters, is what we'll call it, of a potential county water plan. This year, staff began researching county level and local water plans from across the United States. We found case studies from the Western U.S. Water deprived locations such as Colorado and Arizona, and plans as local as Orange County and Suffolk County, New York. A lot of these plans outline specific municipal demographics, environmental and land use data, evaluate the projected future water demand, identify ways to conserve water, identify smart land use and growth strategies, as well as methods for source water protection, drought management, and energy efficiency strategies, and various research and monitoring options. Additionally, they include financial frameworks to implement these strategies and more. Many of these water plans are included as amendments to larger county comprehensive plans and hazard mitigation plans to help with longevity of implementation and prevent it from being a report that just sits on a shelf. On this slide is a quick potential draft based on our research of other water plans we have found, and you could look at each bullet point as its own section or chapter in the larger county water plan. So this plan will be developed via a collaborative process with the new task force members and subcommittee members. We envision this process to be similar to other New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Department of Health, and/or Department of State watershed-based plans, involving an interdisciplinary approach, balancing technical data, public needs, legal considerations, and environmental sustainability through thorough planning, ongoing stakeholder collaboration, and flexible management to adapt to changing conditions and future challenges. We also want to ensure cross-collaboration with other county initiatives going on at the same time. So this includes the Climate Smart Communities Task Force and overall sustainability initiatives at the county, the updates to the county's comprehensive plan, the Housing Action Loan Opportunity, known as HALO, at the county, and more. The average time frame to develop a watershed-based plan in New York State is estimated around 1 to 3.5 years, but could take longer or take shorter depending on the cases and what data is available. This time frame accounts for roughly 6 to 12 months of preliminary data collection on current water resources, infrastructure, water quality, and water demand. This can take extra time if there, like I mentioned earlier, is a lack of updated data or if additional studies need to be completed. Additionally, evaluation of existing infrastructure and stakeholder engagement begins at this first phase. Then we move into an additional 6 to 12 month period for goal setting and policy development. So this includes hosting several workshops and webinars to identify goals, define objectives, and develop potential policies. Then we could look at an additional 6 to 12 months for the development of an implementation strategy where we ID projects, timelines, budgets, select who the lead agency would be to implement certain projects, and identify funding options to make these projects happen. Lastly, we move into that final phase, which could take around 3 to 6 months for the public comment process, empowering the public to review and provide additional feedback, and then having a final review and hopefully an adoption by the county legislator and county executive's office. I know that's a lot to absorb, and we'll reiterate that the plan is the focus on the development of this plan once the task force membership reconstitutes. So this will be something that'll be revisited constantly, and it'll be an agenda item at the first meeting and continue moving forward. But this is definitely a big goal of ours to focus on in the near future. Next, we'll go into just some helpful tips and resources that we wanted to share with those attending today. So if there's any information that you're looking to gather on Rockland's local water supply, you could definitely contact us, but we want to make sure that you also have other resources that you can turn to. So navigating a county website or any government website is never easy, right? So we just wanted to walk you through some potential easy things to Google or just some easy ways to navigate these websites. So if you plan to visit rocklandgov.com, you can find Rockland County Department of Health's website, and from there you can toggle to the Environmental Health tab, and lastly, water supply. So there you could find information on our local law, Chapter 389, which focuses on private well testing. And then Article 2 of Rockland County Sanitary Code covers the Rockland County Department of Health well permitting and residential well testing programs. Here you'll also find information on new New York State Department of Health limits for PFOA and PFAS, which is available in several water quality reports from your water supplier. You can also find information on New York State and US EPA lead service line programs. So New York State Clean Water Infrastructure Act of 2017 amended public health laws to require New York State Department of Health to implement a lead service line replacement program. Municipalities do not need to apply to the program as eligibility has been predetermined by the department based on criteria contained in the act. Drought notifications are also issued by the Office of the County Executive and can be found simultaneously as alerts on the county's website, social media pages, and the Department of Health site. The task force website is also a helpful tool. So of course, we're here to give you updates on the task force itself, and we are a sub-page within the environmental health section on Department of Health's website. And there you could find a ton of information from water conservation tips. That's a new sub-page, I guess is the right terminology to say. We have all the previous reports we outlined during that historical slide. We have a link to the 2017 developed GIS application, and then we'll be posting upcoming public meetings onto that website as well. You can also find program details on the New York State Department of Health and New York State DEC's website, which promote source water protection, known through their DWSP2 or Drinking Water Source Protection Program plans. You can also see free riparian buffer kits through the Trees for Tribs programs. You can navigate to interactive mappers on the New York State Department of Health's page to help ID who your water supplier is and learn more about their water quality reports. As for water suppliers, Veolia has their water quality report site as well as their water conservation rebate program. And we also have listed Nyack and Suffern water sites with their water quality reports and regular updates. We also want to tune you into Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rockland County's interactive water quality mapper as well. And I failed to mention, but the town of Orangetown on the bottom left-hand side, you will see that they are the first in Rockland to have received technical assistance through New York State DEC's and Department of Health's DWSP2 program, and they have a lot of information up on their website as well. So now we move into our more of a collaborative session of this meeting. So we thank you for listening to us go over some context setting for the past half hour. We want to thank you for your time and participating in this session. We did receive a few questions through the registration process. We want to address those first, and then we welcome folks to unmute and ask any questions they may have. And if you put your questions in the Q&A, that's great. We'll look there as well. And if you weren't able to navigate there and drop them in the chat, we'll look at that as well. So our first question, before I get there, sorry, Ariana, please note, please note that if we do not get to your questions, this is the first of many meetings that we wish to host with the public, and this is just one of many virtual meetings. We're also going to be looking to host hybrid meetings in the future, so in person and virtual, to allow for that flexibility, as well as see us in in-person settings too. So on that note, I'll pass it over to Ariana to help address the first question we received.
Thanks, Nicole. So the first question that we received through the registration was, how can others collaborate on future community events? First and foremost, thank you for this question. We are always eager to connect and learn more about how we can grow our partnerships. So I'll send a link in the chat, but recently we just published a request for public speaking engagements and collaborations form. I know that's a mouthful, but this will empower our public, private, and non-governmental partnerships related to education programs and speaking engagements and all special projects and more to kind of be centralized, and it can help us understand what others are really looking for. So we'll be sharing this link. Thanks, Nicole, for adding it. So it's now in the chat, just in case you need to access it. We'll be sharing this link through an email blast. So if you're not already connected to our email blast, send us an email. We'll also publish it on our social media, and we'll also have it on our government website that was listed on the slides prior. And again, you'll be receiving these slides, so you don't have, if you don't have notes to take down where you'll be able to find this, you'll be able to receive it through some of the send outs that we'll have via email. And then the second question, I'll pass it on to you, Nicole.
Thank you, Ariana. So we had a few folks ask who will be members of the task force. So as outlined, members are designated through the founding resolution, which we previously highlighted on slide 6. And again, as Ariana mentioned, we'll be sharing this all out. It's also listed on our task force website. We currently do not have a finalized list as we are in the process of speaking with prior task force members and identifying potential new members based on initiatives that have evolved over the past decade or since the task force was formed in 2014. We also want to be mindful of organizations that might have been created later on that overlap with our mission and goals. These information sessions are helping to identify priorities, staff capacity, and cross-collaboration potential. So we want to ensure that our goals will be reached with the cross-collaborative support that is needed from our members and subcommittee members. We also want to be mindful that the county is doing a lot of great work right now in the sustainability space, and our stakeholders may overlap with those other initiatives. So we want to avoid burnout while also ensuring we're breaking down silos and working holistically across government and communities. So we hope to have a task force list available sometime this spring, and the goal would be to reconstitute sometime in the summer or fall at the latest. Our next question was, what are the goals and rules of the task force? So we previously covered some of this, but I'll try and summarize here. As covered earlier, the task force mission is to develop a county water plan and comprehensive water policy, which ensures a safe long-term water supply for Rockland County and incorporates sustainability, demand-side principles, and conservation. The authority of the task force is to advise and guide the task force chair, Legislator Beth Davidson, and this is done through the collaboration of the 19 members serving as a fact-finding group, providing technical support and community engagement on various projects related to ensuring a safe long-term drinking water supply for Rockland County. Our fourth question that we received was, where will we see the task force next? The task force staff can be found at a variety of community-based events, including upcoming environmental committees of the legislature, as well as at future task force public meetings. So again, those public meetings probably won't take place until the summer or fall, but as a near-term event, if you want to pencil in your calendars, you can definitely see us at the county's Youth Fest / Government Day, which is being hosted on Sunday, March 30th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Rockland Community College's Fieldhouse. And we'll drop a link in the chat in case you're interested in learning more of participating in that event. And then our last question that we received was, will there be collaboration with Veolia New York? So the task force has hosted several information sessions with past task force members, including Veolia New York. They were actually our first meeting that we had earlier this year. With new leadership and through active reconstitution of the membership, we're optimistic of a collaboration in the near future. Additionally, Veolia has actively participated in the DWSP2, or the Drinking Water Source Protection Plan, with the town of Orangetown. And we hope to continue collaborating with them through the Water Conservation Plan implementation and the development of our county water plan and their active conservation program. So now we will open the floor to attendees to ask questions. Again, you can continue to use the Q&A function if you'd rather type stuff into that feature, or if you would like to unmute, please feel free. Again, that's on the top banner, and you should just be able to hit the down arrow and unmute, or just select the mic and unmute. Okay, so Larry, I see a question from you in the Q&A. Thanks for using that feature, and a few others have their hands up, so we'll go to you next. Thank you for using the raise hand feature. After the initial 3 subcommittees are formed, will there be more subcommittees added later to address other aspects of a broader water plan? That's a great question, Larry. So yes, as mentioned, we want to be mindful of staff capacity. We want to have staff attending these subcommittee meetings and being able to see near-term and long-term results of these community meetings to also avoid burnout and keep momentum moving, and see visual, or maybe not visual, see actionable items be taken from these subcommittee meetings. So to answer your question, yes, there will likely be evolving subcommittees, ones that form and then close out once a special project has closed, or they might evolve from that special project into another subcommittee. So we definitely foresee more than 3 subcommittees being active. It just depends at what time and what phases in the process. I hope that answers your question. So Suzanne Barkley here, we'll skip that part. What are the priorities in implementing the current water conservation plan? That's perfect. I will pass that question over to Ariana, as she is our water conservation coordinator and doing really great work.
Thank you. And hi, Suzanne, and thank you so much for your question. So essentially all 20 measures, of course, are a priority, but right now we're really starting to hit with that information-based strategy. And so essentially the first 1 through 6 measures, just so that we can build that foundation across the county for everyone to understand why some of these changes are being implemented, to kind of lay that groundwork for some of those heavy hitter measures, such as incentive sharing and some of those policies that we're looking to develop to be able to encourage more water conservation. So that's part of why we're really starting to bolster up with our community outreach. And then from there, we're going to grow our partnership. So once the task force is fully reconstituted, we're really hoping to get some input in terms of implementation from not only task force members, but members of the public who might sit on the Water Conservation Committee. So right now we're leading with measures 1 through 6, but we're really looking to gain more information about what makes sense for implementation, because each and every single one of those 20 measures outlined in the plan requires a lot of stakeholder engagement, a lot of community mobilization, and we really can't do it without having some insights and some buy-ins from local municipalities, from other active members. So that's really where our priority lies. So we're bolstering up our education, and then we're going to end up implementing some of those other incentives as well and those other measures as well. And I hope that answers your question, but if you have additional questions, feel free to continue to add them into the chat.
We did have a question, and Sam, you might be able to best answer this. How much Rockland water is earmarked for Bergen County?
Yes, I saw that question, Michelle. So I believe what you're probably asking about are the Lake DeForest Hackensack River releases from the dam. So Veolia is obligated to release a baseline amount. I don't have that exact number. I think it's a little under 10 million gallons a day from the from the lake and the dam to keep a baseline flow in the stream. More does flow when the dam is spilling. Now, back many years ago, the company did have like an intercompany agreement where they did occasionally do additional releases down to the New Jersey reservoirs. Some of the parameters of that changed. That's controlled by the New York State DEC. They actually need to ask permission for those before they do those now, and we have not seen any extra releases made in many years now. So there really isn't any more water than the bare minimum when the reservoir isn't full. That's heading down to New Jersey, or and then only when it's spilling do they get above that baseline amount. And those releases are for two purposes. Village of Nyack is downstream as well too, so they need to be able to withdraw waters as well.
Michelle, I hope that answers your question, but if not, feel free to continue to add. And then I see your comment here in terms of the conservation efforts should include Bergen as well. I'm not sure if you mean conserving the actual water, such as what Sam was talking about with the releases, or if you meant with the conservation plan. But as far as the conservation plan, we're always willing to collaborate as long as there is some focus on Rockland residents as well. So if you have any leads, please feel free to send them. Okay. Perfect. Oh, so I see here it says no, it meant with the conservation plan. Yeah, we're always willing to collaborate as long as there's a main focus on Rockland residents in any sort of event or initiative. I'm more than happy to collaborate with anyone, especially from Bergen as well. Thank you. And I will check to see if we have other. I don't see anything else in the Q&A, but I do see Jacqueline. I see that you have your hand raised, and you said you are able to unmute, correct?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is so wonderful. I'm so glad I managed to get onto this. Thank you all so much. Very happy this is being reconstituted. So I had a couple of questions, so I won't waste any time. I'm wondering what, if anything, can this body, all of you and all of the people that will be joining, do regarding the impaired water body status of Lake DeForest, which is according to the DEC. So it's the lake itself is not in such great shape, and so I'm wondering if that's going to be a part of what you're talking about and your planning. And then my other question is, actually, I saw something on the slide on the comprehensive plan for the county regarding like development, and I guess that means builders. And so my big question is your comprehensive planning going to include issues to do with overdevelopment and the continued willingness to serve that Veolia says that they have to do, even when we're talking about massive developments. So I'd like to know what kind of planning is going into ameliorate this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will, I know that that was a two-part question. The first one has to do with impaired waters with Lake DeForest, and the second one has to do a little bit with the overlap between the county's comprehensive water conservation plan as well as development. So I'll speak a little bit to that because I know that I oversee some of that. So within the county's water conservation implementation plan, there are some policies under the regulations. And Nicole, I'm not sure if you're able to pull that slide 9 up, but if not, then I'll just speak to it. But essentially, what we're looking to do is engage with local municipalities to help better educate them and help to give them the information that they need when they're making decisions when it comes to local planning boards and when it comes to zoning boards of appeals for density limits. So we're not in a role where we're able to necessarily enforce or hold development accountable to certain changes, but we can work collaboratively with our planning department, our local municipalities and developers to help give them more information to be able to be informed about ways that they can be more water efficient, especially when it comes to outdoor water use. As far as willingness to serve letters, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that that comes from Veolia, and that has to do with Veolia and the development, and the task force doesn't really have oversight over that particular method, but in our capacity, we're able to serve in an advisory role, and we're able to give more information and research in ways that developments could be more water efficient.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think this task force has a big part in long-term planning and water supply needs. And yes, there's, it's a home rule state, so generally local municipalities kind of control land use and land development for the most part. So it would be challenging to try to influence that, I think, for this task force or for the county in general. But something we do at the health department is we do regulate all the public water systems, and when there are expansions, we make sure that the water systems are going to be able to adequately serve that new development. Despite our population growth for many years, and I've given updates on this periodically to this group, to the task force members in the past, and probably would look to again in the future, on just where water usage trends have been heading. And generally, despite population growth, we are seeing pretty, stagnant water demands, or flat, I guess the demand for water hasn't been increasing along with the population growth in the county. A lot of reasons for that. I think that, the attention to conservation measures and the importance of it has probably played a pretty big factor in that. So we do look to those things, but we are starting to see some of the more larger open space developments on the horizon now. So we don't know how long that'll sort of keep up. So it's something that I think kind of needs to be a constant conversation. We have our role at the health department. Task force has a piece in this, the water companies, municipalities, everyone does. And I think especially now, and Beth might be able to add to this, we've kind of got these sort of competing demands for housing and affordable housing, and sort of the housing crisis that we're sort of seeing nationally. So we got things sort of happening in all directions right now, and everything's sort of pushing and pulling. So I think water plays a very important part in all the long-term planning. It's going to go around all of these things, and I think it's good that this group of important stakeholders, sort of reforms and gets together and starts having these important conversations.
Thank you very much. I guess my big question here is that with so much housing need, in many places, the communities have access to the Croton watershed or the Catskill water, which we don't have. So it makes it much more difficult for us to be even considering the kind of housing that Rockland County might need. But anyway, I thank you very much. And then that other question about the impaired status of Lake DeForest, we can get to that another time. Thank you.
And Sam and Nicole, I can jump in and touch on that a little bit. Thanks for referencing my dual roles. I also do serve as the vice chair of the new Housing and Economic Development Committee, and I will be serving on the Housing Task Force. We are 3,200 units short in Rockland County. That's just a reality. And so I think it's great that these task forces both exist and that there will be some overlap and that this work will not be siloed so that we can ensure that we're meeting the housing needs of our communities while also taking into account our water quality and usage and availability. So please rest assured we are keeping our eye on both balls as much as we can. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Legislator Davidson. I do see here, I'll just go through in order from what I see in the chat, and then I'll switch over to Q&A as well. So I do see here from Suzanne Barclay, a comment on how there are a couple of data centers being proposed, which are known to be huge water users. And you're wondering if the task force can consider guidelines to require reuse of water by these facilities. So I'm really happy that you're bringing that point up. This has come up in the schools as well with some of the youth. They're interested, especially when we're talking about AI and the amount of water that goes in to some of the data centers related to AI. It's a hot topic. And I believe that the task force is already identifying maybe data centers as a potential point of interest for where we can continue to provide more guidance and kind of better understand that field so that we can tailor our work to that. And that could include potential guidelines for some data centers. So thank you for bringing that up, Suzanne.
If I might just add something to that, I know years ago we saw some real large water need numbers from the data centers, and I don't have the data in front of me to see how much they're actually using. But I am aware that, and I've been sort of aware of some of the things, and they do recycle water, I believe. Most of them do, at least the one that I was familiar with back at that time was recycling water for the cooling water for the data center. And some of those large anticipated numbers that we were seeing that I think everybody kind of keyed into many years ago, was my understanding they were sort of emergency numbers. If their sort of recirculation systems went down, that they might need that water for short periods of time until they got things back up. So they had to, water chemistry or things they had to purge. So I do think some of those initial numbers that we were seeing were a little more alarming, and worst case scenarios that probably didn't play out in the day-to-day. So I think that educating ourselves a little bit on how much water they're actually using is probably necessary, because I think we had a slightly skewed view of what those usages might have been many years ago when we saw some of those numbers initially.
Perfect. Okay, great. So as Matt noted, it's been pretty dry. Is the task force able to get anything done if we get into drought conditions this spring? An emergency is a terrible thing to waste or something like that. So as mentioned earlier, the task force is housed within the county's Department of Health and the Center for Environmental Health. It is a collaborative decision, I should say, between the county executive's office and the Department of Health, whether the county itself would go into a drought declaration. But I would like to pass it over to Sam to explain that process a bit. And then through the task force hat, we are working, well, I should say Ariana primarily and myself as support is working on creating more information in terms of outreach and messaging on water conservation, especially during those times of a drought declaration. So Sam and Ariana, if you want to add additional information there, please do.
Yeah, I'll just add to that a little bit. Yes, at the Department of Health, we watch our own drought indicators very closely. In our county sanitary code, we have the ability to make drought declarations or water supply emergency declarations of any type that would impose some mandatory water use restrictions. We've had to do this from time to time. I'm a little uncertain, where we're going to be this spring right now. State metrics still have us at a moderate drought right now. I just looked at that data today. Our local metrics are kind of evaluated monthly data, so we're not currently hitting any of our local metrics to trigger us thinking about any declarations. But our Lake the Forest isn't quite full. Potomac Pond, which Veolia relies on to augment the Rampo River, is not as full as we'd like to see it yet going into the watering season. We had a very dry month last month, and this month's kind of looking a little bit more closer to average. We got some snow out there that's going to melt, so we're kind of sort of in this range. We don't really know if we're going to be starting off in a bad place or not, but we're looking at it closely, and if we know that we're going to, if I think I can't really say where we're going to be right now. We're just sort of like on the line. But if we feel like we're going to go into the watering season with shortages and potential water use restrictions, we do like to make those declarations early before folks start investing in their landscaping projects in the spring. So I can't really say where we're going to go right now. It could kind of go either way. We're going to probably be taking it week to week and seeing where we are some point next month before any final decisions. But again, we'll keep an eye on that, and I think we'll be working hand in hand with the task force and really hope and rely on these folks to help us get the word out, whether it's mandatory measures or suggestions in education and things people could just do if we're more in a voluntary situation to get us through the season.
And just to add to that, so whenever we're not in drought, under a drought declaration, we're always promoting general water conservation information through our social media web pages and sometimes through electronic newsletters, such as, with the town of Clarkstown. But when we are in a drought declaration, and once that's already been confirmed and it's official, then we work closely with the Department of Health to come up with some of that important messaging to be able to get the public to participate in terms of trying to get our water demands down. So that's one of the ways that we can help and support in terms of some of the messaging. And then should a declaration come about, then we will also reinforce and repost that message so that we can ensure that all community members are up to date in terms of our current drought status, should that be established. So those are some of the ways in which we help. But generally speaking, we're always doing some water conservation education and trying to get everyone to understand the limitations around our water systems.
Thank you, Ariana and Sam. We do have some other folks with their hands raised. So Suzanne Mitchell and George Potanovic, you should both be able to enable your mics now. And if you want to test that with us, just let us know.
Suzanne,
we can hear you.
Me? Yeah,
perfect.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to talk about irony for a minute. Literally, we just brought in the mail, and there is a letter from Viola stating that our well that feeds our property, in our district, has discovered PFOA and PFOS. And I'm just curious about what the task force will do in terms of trying to stay on top of this. I'm going to call it an epidemic because it has been occurring quite often in the water in Rockland County. That's basically my question for right now.
Would you like me to take that one?
Sam,
to start?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we are probably a little more at the health department and our water supply regulatory program, probably a little more directly involved with that. But yes, since the new regulations were put in place by the state, lowering the maximum contaminant level for PFAS and PFOA to 10 parts per trillion. Like, just want to remind everybody that's much, much lower than most of our volatile organic standards are. We've found in Rockland and in a lot of the developed counties that it is very common to find groundwater and surface water, for that matter, with these levels in the ground, in the water. In the initial rounds of testing before the regulation was even in place, Veolia did a lot of sort of proactive work, testing all their water systems, getting designs sort of before they even were required to in place submitted to the State Department of Health for review. And they put on a number of treatment plants. I'd say about a dozen or so water treatment plants went online the last couple of years. They have had a couple more wells that were below the standard, sort of pop above the standard, and that and was aware that this notice was going out to a portion of the customers for this latest well that has been over the state standard. So yes, this is a big problem. The water systems throughout the nation are still sort of catching up with this problem. We have some small systems in the county that also have some issues and are looking to have treatment, are working to have treatment installed to take care of those. So very common in Rockland in these low levels. We're lucky in that we're seeing them in these lower levels that don't require like immediate action. There are higher levels that have been seen in other parts of the state where the water is considered undrinkable or unsafe to drink. So we're not seeing that in Rockland. We haven't seen any wells that are sort of in that higher range, which is more in the, I'm sorry, I'm not recalling the number of my head, but the guidance and the notices change up around, I want to say 50, I don't have the exact number, right around 50 parts per trillion. So we're more commonly seeing things when they're over the limit from like 10 to 20 parts per trillion. So they are lower levels. These regulations are in place to sort of provide a margin of safety and protection, beyond where there are known and studied health effects. So, that's why you're getting these notices for the customer transparency, and the VLA is required to and is working on putting treatments on these other wells that are there that are over the limit now. Now, just so you're aware, there's an EPA regulation that is sort of in the works. Who knows what's going to happen at the federal level with federal regulations anymore, but it was on track to come out and lower that standard even further down to from 10 parts per trillion at the state standard down to 4 parts per trillion. So that was going to be even more, like it would almost be hard to find a well in Rockland County that isn't going to have detections down at that level. So this isn't over. We're just sort of in the initial phases of it. The truth is we're going to keep finding more and more wells probably that are over the standard, especially when this level gets lowered even more. I can say that Veolia is being proactive and already working on designs and submitting designs for the treatment plants that are going to be needed for this new lower federal standard that's on the horizon as well. So it is a problem.
Well, let me ask a follow-up to that, if you don't mind. So those are the public wells that are monitored by the water company. What about all the private wells? Because we happen to have a private well on our property. And that's my main source of drinking water, myself and all of the neighbors around me. So I'm just curious what we can do. I mean, obviously we're supposed to test our wells every year. Maybe you recommend twice a year, I'm not sure. But what can we do to protect ourselves? And should the task force, because this is about the task force, be putting out some sort of information for private well owners in that regard?
Yeah, I think we've started having some preliminary discussions, and we've been thinking all along, like, what does this mean for private wells? So right now there is no regulatory standard for PFAS and PFOA for private wells. We do at the county have a private well testing law on property transfers, and it's not currently included with that batch of testing either. One of the sort of issues with testing is, yes, if you're concerned about it, we recommend testing for it. Unfortunately, the typical test we recommend for private well owners is reasonable in cost, and testing for PFAS and PFOA is very expensive. We'll probably find it's going to be between like $500 and $600 for each test for PFAS and PFOA. And to be honest with you, most wells are probably going to be over at least this new limit that's coming out there too. So guidance is a little complicated. Now, what I would say is things like the Brita filters and water filters in your refrigerator, they are basically small granular activated carbon filters that are basically the industry standard, and that are being put on the public water supplies. Much larger versions of those to remove these chemicals, and generally those would be effective too. So my main recommendation is if you're concerned about these chemicals, is to use that for your drinking water. One good thing about the levels that we're seeing in Rockland, there are no other significant exposure risks from like bathing in the water or vapors, like there can be for some chemicals and other things. So essentially, if you're using water for cooking and drinking, if you can use those types of household filters and replace them per the manufacturer's recommendations, which is generally every 6 months for like the refrigerator filters, that's probably the best thing folks can do to protect themselves from those chemicals.
Thank you so much.
Things. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Suzanne. Just to add to that, for the task force itself, we do want to be able to be a resource for education and outreach and information sharing and help fill those gaps that you mentioned, Suzanne, too. So we are going to be mindful of that as we develop our priorities list. And if you want to add that into our priority user engagement survey, which we showcased earlier on the QR code, and that'll be in what we send out next week in terms of a recap of this presentation, please feel free to add that recommendation there as well.
Okay, thank you.
We will move on to a few other questions that we have in the chat, and I know a few others raised their hands as well. So I see one from Jackie, I believe is what came in next. Is there any way to protect Lake to Forest from a potential bomb train incident, potentially building a serious retaining wall, etc.? So we'll try and connect that to source water protection and ways to get creative in terms of hazard and emergency preparedness. So that is a potential chapter in our county comprehensive water plan and comprehensive water policy. So I don't have an exact answer for you for that right now, but it is something that we are trying to identify in terms of emergency preparedness. Sam, if there's anything you have to add to that, or Legislator Davidson, please feel free.
Okay.
Is someone unmuted?
Well, it's Jackie.
Oh, Jackie,
here.
great. Yep.
Yeah, because there was an incident where a train did turn over, and thank goodness it wasn't full of, the toxins. But if it had that in it, our water supply would have been entirely contaminated. So it's a real serious concern with more and more bomb trains, and with President Trump moving forward with liquid natural gas. That's going to be transported too. And then I just had, I'm sorry, one other question, which was, is there any way that the health department in Rockland County can get funds, maybe through the state legislature, I don't know, to do some sort of blood testing program, at least for pregnant women, to see if the water they're drinking while they're pregnant is really loaded with PFAS? They should know. They should be able to know this so that they can try to protect themselves a little bit more. I go to a lot of the Water Quality Council meetings with the Department of Health and sometimes the DEC and other agencies, and I don't know why we can't have a program for vulnerable people to get some blood test baseline going for at least our most vulnerable people. Thank you.
Sam, is that something that you think Rockland County Department of Health would be equipped to be able to tackle, or something that we could earmark for the task force to see if there's any potential grants or public health efforts? Or Legislator Davidson, if you have anything to add as well, please feel free.
So, we have programs with blood level testing. I'm going to use like for lead, for example, and in children, so I think I would have to say, I think generally blood testing is done for a variety of reasons, and for things like PFAS and PFOA, it's more to study the biological burden of what we're carrying around with us in our bodies, which many of us are. I think we kind of know we all have some bioaccumulation of these PFAS and PFOA. Maybe some of it from the water, but just from our consumer products that we've been using all of our lives. So, that's something that's been recognized as a problem, and there's multiple agencies and ways to sort of deal with that. There's clearly like some of the water-related issues we're talking about, but also trying to get these out of, consumer products that are sold and things that we're using. So, we do sort of this universal children testing on lead because there's something actionable, like there's an actionable public health intervention that can come from that. Like, where is the source? Often it's lead paint in the homes. We can go out there, we can find them, we can get things fixed, and it can be corrected. When you do blood testing, biological testing for something like PFAS and PFOA, it's like it would be difficult to do an intervention around that. So that's why I think that it's something that probably wouldn't necessarily be feasible or practical to do, because what would you do with that information? We kind of know it's been everywhere, and we're trying to get it out of everything. So it would be harder to develop an actionable program around something like that. But I do know it is being studied. I believe the State Department of Health did some studying, and I haven't seen the results of the study, to sort of get some samples from folks around the state to try to study this biological burden more. But that's all I'm aware of as far as those types of tests. It's like, what are you looking for and why you're looking for it?
Yeah, I just looked at the CDC, and there is a tool to measure PFAS in blood, but you have to already be aware that there's PFAS in the water source, which kind of defeats the purpose of what Jackie's suggesting. So that's at the federal level. So,
I was just saying that the intervention would be the person knowing they're pregnant, and maybe the water supply they're drinking from or the water supply they're using for mixing formula is tainted, and that they would have to try to find some way to purify that or to find an alternative. But I just feel that pregnant women especially should be able to find this out and protect themselves and their infant or their fetus. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. We'll be following that with regards to the task force moving forward. So I thank you for vocalizing that question. Before we go into our next question, I do want to acknowledge some additional people in the audience. So we have Rockland County Legislator Paul Cleary on the line, and staff from Senator Kirsten Gillibrand's office. So we thank you for attending and taking the time to participate in today's webinar. So we'll go over to a question from Tayo. So Tayo is the new sustainability, and I hope this is the right title, sustainability coordinator at the Rockland County Planning Department, and she is going to be overseeing the Climate Smart Communities Task Force. And the question here is, will the Water Task Force be involved with any plans to implement water efficient landscaping or xeriscaping practices across county facilities and county parks? So I'm going to pass that answer over to Ariana, and we could have I'll fill in after that, and potentially Legislator Davidson as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Tayo. So to answer your question, yes, we are looking to collaborate on those fronts. Water efficient landscaping and xeriscaping in particular has been identified as a priority in the county's comprehensive water conservation implementation plan, specifically through Measure 3, which is our sustainable education program. So I foresee a lot of overlap, especially with Cornell Cooperative Extensions, perhaps their Master Gardeners program. I know that Michelle had written that in the chat as well, and they're a great resource for these kinds of projects. I also see overlap with you, Tayo, via the Climate Smart Communities initiatives. And I also believe that for an effort like this, where we're looking to get government property to kind of replicate and represent as a model in terms of water efficiency practices, it's going to take some collaboration also with local municipalities. As we know, some properties are county owned, some of them may be state owned, and some of them may be owned by local towns and villages. So it's going to be a larger collaborative effort. And I know that we can probably get involved with Division of Environmental Resources, in addition to county facilities and executive leadership, so that we can determine the pathway to implementation for something like that. It's important for government buildings to be included in the movement for water efficiency. I certainly believe that we should be carrying out the actions that we're asking others to carry out. And government and institutional buildings are also highlighted in the plan, again, through Measure 11 for building retrofits. So I think that we're still in the phase of implementation where we're looking to plan and design what these kinds of collaborations would look like. We're open to feedback from the public in terms of what they'd like to see for more water efficient and sustainable landscaping and lawns. And so we open up that door. Again, you can use that link to figure out how we can collaborate and connect. But I know that you and I will be having many more discussions through Climate Smart Communities. So again, thank you for that question. I hope that answers it. And if not, feel free to continue through the chat as well.
And Ariana, I'll just add that we've also been connecting with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program. I know it's a mouthful, but they do have a new climate team there, and they're really eager to work with Rockland County across several departments. And we've met with them through some information sessions recently, and they have expressed a lot of adaptation or climate adaptation encouragement in terms of project implementation, and green infrastructure was, of course, highly recommended. And they have a lot of great initiatives that we mentioned earlier through the Trees for Trips program and Riparian Buffer in a Bag program for homeowners. So yes, piggybacking off what Ariana said, we do want to definitely encourage as much green infrastructure as we can, and be mindful that we need to have these conversations with the people that maintain those green infrastructure practices at the very beginning. We want to make sure that these practices are at the capacity of those who have to maintain them to ensure that they work, and also that we hear what could be potential impacts early on as well, so that these potential projects do flourish. And lastly, I see a question from Marcy Danker from the Village of Nyack. So Marcy, if you want to unmute, I could do that for you, or I could read your question. All right, so I'll read Marcy's question here. She just wanted to gain clarity. Is it not necessary to have a reverse osmosis or RO filter and only charcoal for the PFAS types in our water supply here in Rockland?
I can take that one, Nicole. So reverse osmosis may be effective at removing those. I think it probably is, but I can't say it's something I've looked at closely. That isn't something that are really practical, or I'd say even necessary for our public water sources to use. I mean, large scale reverse osmosis filters are, they cost a lot. They're costly. They cost a lot to run. They have a waste stream, so you're kind of wasting some water with those. Not quite the most water conservative approach. And as far as public water, larger public water supplies, we're seeing the granular carbon or ion exchange systems are the more common types. And we've only been seeing so far the granular carbon going in on our Rockland water supplies. So reverse osmosis may be an option for the private water system. Again, I haven't looked into this and how effective they are at these low levels of PFAS and PFOA removal, but my understanding of them is that they probably would be, but that would be something to look into more if that was going to be considered on a smaller supply. But to answer your question, no, it's not the only option. Granular activated carbon does work well with the PFAS and PFOA chemicals and the families of chemicals that we've been seeing in Rockland generally, and probably I would say they're probably less costly, and they won't waste as much water as a reverse osmosis system.
Thank you, Sam. Hopefully, Marcy, that answered your question. We are approaching almost 7:25, and we want to be mindful of everyone's time. Great, thanks, Marcy. So I am going to encourage folks to continue to communicate with us, and that could be done through our contact us. So here you can have emails to us through our general inquiries, and that's at rocklandwatertf@co.rockland.ny.us. I'm sorry, it's such a long county email, but that's what you're stuck with. So please ensure you do check your spam. At times, these emails will go there, especially from the Rockland Water TF handle. So just be mindful that that is where all of our future kind of mass mailings will go out of, and that would include an annual report that we're very excited to be submitting sometime in March to everybody. So that'll capture all of our achievements from 2024. And then we might be submitting additional kind of more e-based newsletters in the interim, probably on a quarterly basis. So check out from there, and we'll share any local, regional, water-related events too via email to encourage cross-collaboration, learning, trainings, etc. So again, myself, I'm Nicole Leibel. I'm the coordinator of the task force. My direct phone and email are listed on this slide. We will, of course, follow up with everyone who registered, even if they couldn't physically be here tonight. You'll hear back from us. And then Ariana Polanco, who also spoke, is our water conservation coordinator. Her direct phone and email is listed there as well. We do want to celebrate a milestone for us, which is our social media. So those who have been involved with the task force for a long time know the road that it has been to get us here. So we have a Facebook and LinkedIn account. It went live pretty recently, but we were able to have a few posts there. So we are encouraging folks to follow us, like our posts. We will be putting a ton of information from general outreach and events to international, national days, trainings, webinars, etc. When there's drought alerts or declarations, we will be able to share more information on that through those tools. We also have a hyperlink here, which we will share with you via email, to our Rockland Water TF page. Again, I know stuff's not easy to navigate on a county webpage, but if you simply Google Rockland Water Task Force, it's the first thing that pops up. Thank you, Ariana. So that's dropped in the chat for folks if you want to bookmark it, favorite it to check back. We will be providing updates on that website soon. I was very recently trained in the county website, so bear with me for a bit with a learning curve, but we're hoping to post all of our recent press releases and any other tips, fact sheets, etc. Our newsletters will all go there. Oh, thank you, Ariana. There's a lot of stuff going on in the chat. So that said, we just want to express our gratitude again for everyone taking the time this evening to spend the last hour and a half with us. We do have 3 more minutes. So Legislator Davidson, if you would like to close, and if anyone else would like to say anything, please feel free. Thank you.
Actually, Nicole, I'm going to ask you a favor and toggle back one slide to where we just were. So I want to point out the 3 logos that you see here. We have our, new Rockland Water Task Force Be Water Wise logo. You see the county legislature and you see the county executive's logo. This is the only governmental body like this in the entire county that works hand in hand between the legislature and the county. And I want to point that out because I think it really underscores the importance of this work to both the legislature and the administration, and just my gratitude that this is a partnership that we're undertaking, continuing together, begun by my predecessor, Harriet Cornell. And so I just wanted to point that out and thank Ariana and Nicole and Sam for their amazing work in preparing tonight's presentation and in continuing to serve the County of Rockland and making sure that we have the clean water, drinking water that we deserve going forward. So just wanted to end on that note.
Perfect. Thank you, Legislator Davidson. So as mentioned, you will receive a follow-up email from us likely sometime next week. You might even receive one automatically generated through Teams webinar. Please check your spam. Again, I think a lot of things will go there by default, but you'll be hearing from us moving forward. And again, this is just the start of hopefully many conversations in the near term. And please do check all of our very now active social media pages for updates. So thank you again and have a great night.